Hi all. I want to welcome everybody to our Federation's wonderful program that we have here. Today we have a webinar that's going to be about Israel Aid, which you'll hear about in a few moments. But before we begin, I wanted to introduce Jan Seligman Weiss, who will introduce our speaker today. So thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions and answers, please put them in the Q&A spot, and I will make sure that they are forwarded on to our speaker, Seth, and he will answer them at the end of his program. Okay, so just place them there. I will respond saying I see them, and I will take care of them and give them to the host. So thank you again for joining us. And Jan, would you like to introduce the speaker?
Yes, thank you very much, Ariella. Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Seligman Weiss. Thank you all for joining us for this important live webinar with Seth Davis, CEO of Israel Aid US. Federation continues to work very hard in keeping our community socially connected during this very disconnected time. It's been challenging, but I'd like to give a big shout out to the entire staff who's been working so hard from their homes to bring programs like this to our community. And today we have a special treat, hearing from Seth Davis. But before I turn the program over to him, allow me to share with all of you a little bit about his background. After the hurricanes hit in 2018, Seth went to North Carolina and Florida and visited the utter devastation in Paradise, California and Puerto Rico, as well as going to see the refugee crisis in Greece and Germany. Seth brings the spirit of the Israeli startup nation approach with an American-born culture. He strongly believes that connecting the next gen and professionals in the USA with their counterparts in Israel while doing good in the world is the ultimate solution for strengthening Israel. And with no further ado, I'm so proud to introduce all of you to Seth Davis.
Thank you so much, Jan, and thank you, Ariella. It's really exciting and fun to be back at the New Jersey Northern Federation. Last time it was in person. This time it's with a virtual hug. Yeah, these are unprecedented times. And first and foremost, we would like to send my deepest condolences to anybody that's lost any loved ones. We know we've all been hit very hard in New Jersey and New York City, where I'm living. And for those of you who may be ill, we're wishing you a quick and speedy recovery. But we're also acknowledging that everybody's going through high levels of anxiety and stress during these times. And that in itself is a challenge, and we'll discuss that later. So we're going to try to make this a little more interactive today instead of me just giving a lecture. And I'm going to try to ask you some questions, and I'm going to let you answer on the chat. You all see the chat on the bottom toolbar, what you think is the correct answer, and let's see how well you do as a team. So let's start with this. When do you think Israel was founded? Was it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20, or 50? Write on the chat, 5, 10, 20, or 50. I'll give you another 30 seconds. And when you send a note on the chat, make sure you write all panelists and attendees so everyone can see it. So I see quite a few people wrote 10. One person wrote 72. One person wrote 5, but we have a winner, and it's Susan Benkel who wrote, sorry, it's Haley C., 20 years ago. Yes, that's correct. Israel was founded 20 years ago in Israel by big-hearted people. It was actually, it was formed by many different associations that came together, like the Negev Institute, from the Kibbutzim, from the Moshavim, and a few small NGOs. And they came together to work hand in hand when big disasters happen around the world. One of the first disasters we deployed to was actually in Sri Lanka, which is a country that doesn't even have diplomatic ties with the state of Israel. And that's how Israel was formed 20 years ago. So we'll be celebrating 20 years this year. All right, let's try you out with this second question. Do you think ISRAID is a governmental agency or an NGO? So write GOVT, government, or NGO. Let's see what you think. Okay, so far we're seeing people say NGOs, NGO, NGO. Giving that 30 seconds. Okay, so everyone said NGO, and that is correct. A lot of people confuse ISRAID and the government of Israel. ISRAID is a non-governmental, non-political, non-profit. It's a 501c3 in the States. It's an Amuta in Israel. And it works hand in hand with the government. The government has a foreign ministry arm called Mashav, and they at times go also and deploy after disasters. And many times the IDF has a famous field hospital, which is also ranked the #1 in the world field hospital. And many times, especially when there's search and rescue, for instance, after earthquakes, they will deploy for a week. We work hand in hand together. And the thing is, we stay after they leave many times. So just to clarify, you know, we're very proud of our Israeliness, and it's in our logo, on our shirts, but we're an NGO and we survive on donations. So do you think we're an organization that is first in or last out? So you could do FI for first in or LO for last out. Let's see what you think. Okay, we're getting some interesting answers. Keep it coming. Do you think we're FI or LO? Okay, so interesting mix of answers. I would say most of you said first in, and Israel is really famous for being one of the first on scene. There was a famous story in Haiti that we arrived before the US government and the US relief organizations, and the same thing happened in Puerto Rico. And at the time, Foreign Secretary was Hillary Clinton, and she got really mad. How could we make it before them? And we're so far away, and we're such a big country here in the States. But actually, we're also one of the last out. We stayed in Haiti for 8 years. We're still in Puerto Rico since Hurricane Maria. We're still in Guatemala since the volcano. We're still in Mexico since the earthquake. We stayed in Japan for 7 years. So actually, we like to call ourselves a philo organization, first in, last out, and we are both. So those that answered both, there's a couple of people, you had the right answer. And that's really important when you share with people the pride of being the first, share also the pride of being last out, because last out enables us to create sustainable solutions over time. You work with the community leaders, you bring in the experts, you facilitate, you work hand in hand, and it takes a few years to embed these tools and know-how. So how many countries do you think ISRAID's deployed to since our inception? Would you say it's 14, 35, 52, or 70? 14, 35, 52, or 70? Okay, we're getting multiple answers here. Most people are saying 70. One person said 35. The actual answer is 52 countries. That's the number of places we've deployed to since our inception. And as you heard, it's not just about arriving to a country and leaving a week later, it's actually staying for many months or years in that country to really help build back. So what do we do when we arrive in these countries? And a lot of it really derives from Israel's startup nation or Israel's know-how, as I call it. I like to call it the social startup nation. And there's a few things that won't surprise you that Israel's a global leader. First, it's water technologies and water recyclables. Israel's become globally renowned for this. Israel is partially a desert. 60% of the country is the Negev, and that's a desert. And Israel has an abundance of water and safe water. So this is something we help export to all. It's called WASH, water, sanitation, hygiene. And now due to COVID, everybody knows the importance of sanitation and hygiene, washing our hands at length, and having access to clean water, and the importance to it. The second sector we like to call mental health, psychosocial support in the world of protection. I grew up in a small town called Ashkelon. It's famous for enduring rockets over the last 13, 14 years from Gaza. And many of the children in the town and adults have high levels of trauma and stress and anxiety due to these ongoing sporadic rockets, the sirens. And Israel's really become a global leader in methodologies to help people cope with the stress. It could be art therapy, it could be drama therapy, it could be different forms of therapy, and even much more immersive and sophisticated. And I'll share later a bit of what we're doing to combat COVID around the world using these tools. The third one is livelihood, being innovative, bringing in ingenuity in ways to create income. Many vulnerable communities around the world lack income, and it doesn't enable them to have the basic needs of food and shelter. And what we do is we try to create livelihood. So for instance, we actually create around many places around the world a honey, it's called honey making project from beehives. And this is actually derives from technologies and methodologies from the kibbutzim in Israel. And it's being done as we speak in Nepal and other places around the world by women in villages. It also helps to empower the women in the household. Another area is medical. As you know, Israel's become a leader in medical. Even the cure for COVID, the vaccine may come out of Israel. There's quite a few entities already working on it and on the forefront. And Israel is a big leader in the medical solution. So these are kind of the sectors Israel focuses on. We work on WASH, MHPSS, livelihood, medical. How many people do you think we've helped, beneficiaries, since our inception? Would you say it's 1 million, 2.5 million, or 5 million? 1, 2.5, or 5? What would you say? Let's see the chat. Okay, seeing a few answers trickle in. Anyone else want to give a guess? Okay, so you get an A+ for this one. Everyone answered 5 million. That's correct answer. We've helped over 5 million people. And you know, you say you save one soul, you save a whole world. So we've helped save 5 million souls. Just imagine how big that is. You know, our mission is to help save lives, build back better. Because after disasters, as we're feeling now ourselves, we're here, we go down lower, but we want to build back higher. So we work very hard on that. And the third thing is we like to bridge between people. So by seeing Israelis and Jewish people, and also people between different communities, we create commonalities and middle ground for people to be more respectful to each other. All right, so in how many countries do you think Israel is currently based in? Even now, during COVID, how many countries do you think we have teams on the ground? Would you say 5, 10, or 15, or 0? 0, 5, 10, or 15? Okay, you get an A- for that because nearly everybody said 15, and that's the correct answer. We're really blessed at Israel. We have some of the best staff members in the world, the best people, and they're heroic. A lot of them, when the COVID spread, we said, you know, do you want to come back to your families and be in a safe area? Do you want to be in your home country, if it's Israel or the States? And nearly all of them chose to stay with their communities and work together to help prepare them in advance to the spread of COVID. So it just shows the type of work and the essence of how we work, and we're the boots on the ground. We're not sending supplies or sending help. We're there hand in hand helping and performing the solution. So let's talk a little bit about the COVID response. So as I just mentioned, the people decided, the team leaders with the local hires are still on the ground in 15 countries around the world, in Guatemala, in Colombia, helping Venezuelan refugees, in Mexico, in Bahamas, after Dorian, in Puerto Rico, in South Sudan, Mozambique, Kenya, Uganda, Vanuatu, and many places around the world. So one of the first things we did was to excel the WASH projects. I don't know if you guys remember what WASH is, but it's water, sanitation, hygiene. So we found many refugee camps didn't have enough water stations and soap. It sounds so basic, but the solution was to quickly install as many water stations with abundance of soap, so people start washing their hands for 20 seconds. That's being done in places like Kenya, Uganda. And Kenya, there's a refugee camp called Kakuma with around 200,000 refugees that live in this location. And you can imagine how hard and difficult and challenging that is. The second thing we responded to was actually turning the beneficiaries, those being supported, into the supporters. So in places like Greece or Colombia, where there's already animosity from the local community of refugees coming into their home communities and trying to take over their jobs, and it always creates friction, what we did is we helped train the refugees to be at the forefront of this, to know the solutions and what needs to be done, wearing masks, social distancing, hand washing, etc., and creating posters and putting them around the community and providing lectures to the local people, if it's Germans, Greeks, if it's the Colombians, to create, first to help reduce the potential spread, and number two, to come from somebody that's come into their home to show here, we're here to help and be part of the community. So it's going really well, and it's a really heartwarming project. The third thing is the whole mental health space. So a lot of the focus at the moment is going into PPE and protective gear, and now to food security, which is food insecurity is the worst it's been in a century in the United States. But there's a third component that always is left out, is the mental health. We already heard of the first 3 cases of suicide of healthcare professionals on the front line, which was devastating. But mental health, it could take people years to bounce back if it's not properly taken care of. And ISRAID is already doing immersive training and capacity building with healthcare professionals in China, with the Jewish community in Italy, and now it's looking to launch a program in New York very soon. And also the programs in all the 15 countries have been adopted to help the caregivers, the educators, the religious leaders to embed these tools into the day-to-day. The amount of grievance, obviously, that people are dealing with is unheard of and second to none. And this really needs to be helped. And as a fourth component to that, self-care. The people on the front line have to take a step back and make sure that they're taking care of themselves and giving themselves time to breathe. Because if they're not strong and resilient, the community won't be strong and resilient. In the US, we've launched a network of volunteers across California. We're about to launch also in New Rochelle. So if any of you feel comfortable joining or know people that would like to, we're happy to share details. And many of the food pantries, the size of them have quadrupled with the amount of food that needs to be distributed. And on the other hand, the amount of volunteers available has been diminished because some people don't feel comfortable coming or move back to the hometown. So there's a huge, huge gap that we're trying to help fill. We've been doing this for over a month in California, and as I said, about to launch in New York. We also are doing self-care sessions, which I invite all of you. It's being done 2 to 3 times a week. It's at no charge, and it's a 45-minute session to go through 12 ways to reduce your anxiety and stress. These were tools, coping tools, that were created by an Israeli mental health team. And basically it enables people to learn. Some things seem obvious, but you need to think about how to reduce the intake of information and set boundaries, for instance, or build exercise into your daily routine, or have a daily routine and structure and rituals. So all these things you can learn over 45 minutes, and we invite you to join that and share. We'll also have a website and a video that goes along with that. So just before I open up to questions, how can you help? So first you can volunteer. And I always say when you volunteer, if you feel safe, of course, you're first and foremost giving back to yourself because you feel more fulfilled as an individual and as a person, and you're helping the beneficiaries in need. So if that's something that works out for you, great. Second thing is you could spread the word. We're always combating anti-Semitism and hatred. We also need to be a voice for vulnerable people. You could share these stories more on your social media channels and in your conversations you're having in your community. You can also host us as a speaker if you want in partnership with the Federation, of course, and we could do that at your local shul or community center or club or whatever you have that could be done. And of course, you could choose to donate and support some of these causes around the world or locally as you wish. So I think I'm gonna open up to some questions and happy to answer any thoughts you have. So I'm gonna wait for Ariella to let me know, or you could put it on the chat, some thoughts and questions, and happy to expand.
Yes, please go ahead.
You could share if anything surprised you about the presentation that you didn't know, or it's more than you expected, or thoughts, or feel free to share anything you have in mind. In the meantime, I'll share a story. I was in Greece 2 years ago. We have an operation there since the eruption of the refugee crisis in 2015, where the famous rafts were coming. And, it was an obvious thing to have Israelis and Israeli Arabs hand in hand saving Syrian people that are coming to shore. And they were really shocked to see people with this big Israeli flag. We even have a joke, they think they took the wrong boat and went to Haifa by mistake. But at the end, they really learned to appreciate us and are really grateful for that. And we've actually hired some of the refugees, they work for us. And when I arrived to our community center where we do women's empowerment and vocational training, there was a guy called Ali, he's from Iran. And he saw me with a shirt and he said he's been working with us for 2 months and his dream is to have an Israel shirt. So I ran to the car, to my luggage, got my second shirt, gave it to him, and he went to the other room and came back with the biggest smile I've ever seen wearing the Israel shirt. So when we talk about building bridges, these are the types of opportunities where we can create a brighter future. So mentioning a little bit about the future, someone's asking me here about the future for community. So the future is we're gonna stand on the ground. Actually, Latin America and Africa are a little lagging behind with the COVID spread. Now it's beginning to spread there. And our focus is really to help them mitigate the spread, which is a big concern, obviously, because some of these areas barely have access to safe water. So you can imagine how hard it is to really cope if it really spreads. Some places barely have a medical clinic. And again, it depends when the curve was flattening. We were in Sierra Leone when the Ebola broke out and it was contained, and there is life after. So we have to prepare the people for the day after with mental health strength. Someone asked me here, do we have experience with anti-Israel issues when helping people? So we haven't had much of that, you'd be surprised. And we didn't even have that with Syrian refugees or Iranian. They were just surprised that we were helping them. The main problem was actually with Scandinavian NGOs that CIS is an occupying country and didn't want to collaborate with us. But it's been very rare. It's more of a surprise. It's not, we don't want to work with you. Someone asked about our funding. So Israel's funding, 35% is institutional. Government of Germany, UNICEF, which is a UN subsidiary, believe it or not, World Bank, and 60% is private donations, family foundations. 5% is corporate funders like large pharma companies. So that's kind of more or less how a funding breakdown is. And we thank also the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey for being a partner and support of Israel. We're also very grateful. Someone shares here that He runs Bears from Bergenfield, 18th year of collecting and recycling teddy bears for traumatized Israeli children in need. We have amassed 195,000 bears. That's incredible. If we can share any of these bears, a wonderful organization. Rabbi Claire Ginsburg. Yeah, we would love to be in touch directly. Ariella could give you my contact info, and we would love to, explore. A lot of times in the field, we kind of create a superhero image for people where it actually mirrors yourself. You're the superhero of yourself, and you have the power to excel in any scenario. So bears is somewhere in that world as well. A teddy bear as a companion. Yeah, very nice, beautiful thing. Can you give more details about New York City? So we started this a few weeks ago, as I said, in California at the food pantries. And it's going to be in Westchester, possibly Bethpage, New York. And I think there's also a location yes, there is a location in New Jersey, but I don't remember the location. I think it's actually may even be North New Jersey. I'll have to get back to you. Anyone between 20 to 60 max that has access to a car can come to a warehouse, help sort, pack, arrange the boxes before they go distributed to the families. It's usually a 4-hour volunteer. You could do it once a week, twice a week, and you do a half-an-hour training with IsraAid, and you could join by doing that. Have you ever been asked to help with any disasters in the U.S.? Good question. I didn't allude to that. So IsraAid's been responding to disasters in the U.S. since Katrina. We were also in Harvey after Texas, Sandy. We had teams deployed to the fires of California, working actually with the Boys and Girls Club to build capacity. Puerto Rico, as I mentioned earlier. And now we'll also respond in the U.S. So we're also responding to U.S. And also in the U.S., there's people very vulnerable from the panhandles in North Florida or some areas of North Carolina. So yes, they also need help at times, and not enough people go to those locations. So someone asked if they're senior what they could do. Obviously, to volunteer warehouses now with COVID, I don't recommend it, and we don't recommend it. But there's always other things one could do, from spreading the word to helping with PR to helping with back office. There's always things that one could do if they really want to help. I'm going to share the link. This is the link for the volunteer. If anybody wants to sign up, you could copy and paste that. Anybody could sign up to that. And I will share, and you could share that with your friends and your colleagues. And as for the self-care webinar, I mentioned the 45-minute session to help you deal with 12 ways to deal with stress and anxiety. You can also share that with your communities, your shuls, and whatever circles you belong to. Yeah, so I think we're coming towards an end. You're always a vibrant group, and you can see it's a very tight-knit community and a special community. And again, wishing you a lot of health and resilience. I know Rachel's on the call as well. She's our director of outreach, and she's sending also a big thank you and an email if you want any more info on any of the things we discussed. Think more publicity would be given. Yeah, yeah, we agree. Linda, we're all for it. Anyone that can help to write op-eds, help spread the word. So thank you again for the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey, Ariella, all the team members, and Josh.
Thank you for joining us.
Jan, thank you so much.
I always find your organization to be unbelievable, whether it's in the forefront, like in Greece, taking in refugees, or here actually helping out people in our local community. We are grateful for what you do and what you continue to do. And please stay safe, everyone.
Safe, thank you. Toda rabba, shalom.
Bye. Everyone, please join us next week for our next, or this week for the rest of our webinars. We have more webinars next week as well. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me at ariella.n@jfnnj.org. Again, thank you, Seth, for joining us today. Bye, everyone.